So in the following tutorials, we will use Microsoft Access to create a small prototype database from this relational schema, which I think we've seen it before, at least main parts of it. So, and we will begin by creating this advising nodes table. As you can see, it's a separate table. And in the following videos, we will import faculty table from Excel. This one will be created in Access, and this one will be imported and then edited in Access. So let's see how to do that. We begin with advising nodes. First things first, let's start up our application. And here we basically create a blank database. You can name it any way you want, database, or it will also always generate an automatic name, basic database, and a number. But I'm going to call it advising database. Doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as you know what it is. And already exists, fine. I'm going to rewrite the whole thing and create a new one. So, and this is what we begin with. The Access creates a new table for us by default, but let's close this one, have an empty field here, and create everything from scratch. So there are a couple of options here in terms of creating a new table. You can play with these, but let's try table design, which gives us more flexibility and allows us to a bit, more options. So in once we click table create and then table design, a table pops up, and what we enter here is our main main fields, or the list of entity and its attributes that will be contained in this table. And our relational schema has several main fields here. So first, we're going to have meeting date without space. So that's what our basically attribute will be called, or our variable. And we're going to make it so in Access we can define what kind of data this field will contain. So meeting date is a date. So we have an option here, date and time. So it will be formatted as day and time automatically. And we can add description. Description is basically for ourselves, just to make sure we understand what is, what this field contains. Because when we're creating the database, it's easy to remember when we're working with it. It's easy to remember what each field contains. But if we come back in a month and 2 months, it may be difficult. We may have different types of dates for meeting, for correspondence, and so on. So it always makes sense to add some description. The date when the meeting takes place, something like this. We don't need to change much more here. So we have one field. So the next field is student ID. That's easy to understand what that is. That's going to be short text. That's fine. And we can define, we can tell Access how many characters to retain once we enter data for this field. Remember, we just defined in the fields, which is defining the basically what kind of fields will be contained in this table rather than the information itself, the observation. So how long the student ID can be short text, so we can define it here. By default, it sets it to 225 characters, which is the maximum. And why we would want to limit that? Well, sometimes, usually, the database takes more space because it reserves 255 sort of character spaces, and even if they are empty, it's still going to reserve that, and it's going to take extra space. It's less a problem today, but it used to be a bigger problem. But we can enter any value that makes sense to us. We can put in 20. Doesn't really matter, but just keep in mind that you can redefine this. So let's provide unique, some notes, student identifier, unique student identifier. All right, two fields. Now we can also, looking at our relational schema, we can see that we have the main topic there. And this is going to be short text as well, and we can set the field size to 20 if that's enough. If not enough, we can set it to 30 characters. Again, it depends. We need to think about how big the main topic is going to be and how much space we need to reserve for that. Now, if there are hundreds of thousands of observations, changing a few, adding a few characters here will make a much bigger difference. So again, it matters. The bigger the data set, the more this is going to matter. So the main topic and say keywords for classifying, making things up on the way, on the go, for classifying the conversation. So by the keywords, we can basically understand what the current, I cannot type. We can understand what the conversation was about. Main topic, and another field here is notes. Notes can be a bit longer, so we're going to use it as, define it as data type. I'm sorry, data type is going to be long text. And here, basically, notes about the main outcome of the conversation. Did they agree to meet again? Were they both satisfied with the meeting, and so on? So okay, so we're defined. So our relational schema lists all the fields that need to be listed in each table. So for faculty, we'll have faculty ID, faculty name, last and first name, and then email and office. And for advising notes, we had 4 fields: meeting date, student ID, main topic, and notes. And this is what you type in field name. We define what these are going to be, and then provide some comments for each. These comments are for us. And then we can add additional information here. Now, I hope you remember that each table must have some primary keys, and which will be a unique identifier for all observations, and can be used to connect to other tables. So the way we define primary keys is we click left with the left button here on the field that we want to define as a primary key, and after that we click primary key. So this way we define our primary key. Now, in this particular case, it is quite possible that meeting date on its own will not be enough, because on one meeting date there's going to be several students. Student ID on its own is also not enough, because students may show up several times, and you will have several students in your data set. And when we try submit a request to find information about this student, you're going to have several results for different dates. So in order to have a unique identifier, we need to select 2 of these and hit primary key. So now each visit will be uniquely defined by student ID and meeting date. So it's unlikely a student will show up twice on the same day. Maybe possible, then we would need to add something else like time, specific time. But this is how we're going to do it in this case. And again, this is just to uniquely identify each observation, each row in our future data set will have a unique identifier, which will be a combination of meeting date and student ID. So we can save this table now, and we can rename it into advising. Remember all capitals because this is our entity, advising notes table. Here, okay. So now that we've defined our main fields that we'll have in this table, we can view. So if you go to design and view, we can change the view, and this is actually our table. And these are the fields that we just defined, and they're going to show up here. So we're not entering any data yet, actual data. We just defined the fields for this specific table. And we'll be entering data later on after our design is complete. But this is how we change the view between designing the actual table, and then you can select here, and actual viewing the data. So we can close this. We've already saved it, and the table is saved in our database, which we saved in the beginning, and we can double click on this to open it. So in our advising notes table is ready. So just to tie it back to our initial relational schema that we had, so this is the table that we just created. We call it advising notes table, and we had all the four attributes or fields in that table, and we also used unique identifiers as a combination of date and student ID as a unique identifier, because you can have multiple students in that table and you can have multiple dates. So next we're going to create our faculty table, and instead of manually typing in, we are going to import it from Excel. So see you in the next video.